Hello and welcome to part 2, yes, part 2 of this Airfix 124th Mosquito Cockpit Scratch Building Extravaganza. Not quite sure if that's right. No, it wasn't a Pharaoh's Willy, it was supposed to be a Mummy's Willy, but anyway. So we left off with a bit of scratch building, didn't we? And putting it all together. So, yes. And what we're going to do is a lot of the same. Scratch building. Yay! So as you can see here, I've done a lot of punch and die stuff for all the brackets and this, that and the other, and put some wiring in there. So what we're going to do is put some wiring off here, and this is what we're going to do. So I put some wire around the drill bit into a pin vise and just making sure it's secure so that I can rotate it round a bit like this. So the general rule of thumb that you want to follow in this case is whatever handed you are, is your dominant hand wants to be holding the actual wire and your other hand wants to be rotating the pin vise. And it's just a simple case of making sure that every rotation of the wire going round the drill bit, it stays in contact with the previous part of wire that you've put round the drill bit, if that makes sense. Does in my head. But anyway, that's what you want to aim for. So nice and tight, nice and tight. So if you go too far off the drill bit, what you can do is take it off or take it out of the pin vise and then carry on. And just rotate and rotate. And as you can see, you get a nice length. A nice, like, oh.
Fantastic! That's incredible! We're really the guys, aren't we?
Doesn't matter. Anyway, I'm going to short. I'll leave you to this. So, cheerio. Now with that bit done, it's on to the throttle linkage on the bottom of the throttle quadrant. I already did one earlier, so I'll show you how to do the next one. So I'm just using, I think it's 0.5 or something like that, brass rod, and I'm just offering it up to the actual diagram actually in the book. So I'm going to leave you with this bit. It's just basically just folding some brass rod. So I will see you in a bit. Cheerio. Again, moving on to the next bit, and obviously I've done all these little tie downs, and I'm just measuring it with some vernier calipers, and it's just as simple as that. I'm not quite sure on the measurement, but you can figure it out yourself. And then I'm offering that up to some plastic card, and I'm just making sure that the plastic card is square. And actually I gave up on this idea and then just used as a knife blade. But to get the actual holes to put the wires through, I just drilled some holes, and just drilled one side by side, and just as simple as that. And then when I was done, again I used some vernier calipers to measure it and cut it, or score it and then cut it, so to speak, and I just made a little tie down. It's not very hard, it's just time consuming, to be honest with you. So anyway, again, I'm going to leave you with this. See you in a bit. As you can see, it's very satisfying. It's very nice to actually see a concept in your head come to fruition and actually look kind of alright. I'm not saying it's awesome, but it's actually done what I wanted to do. So I'm happy with that. Anyway, one thing to note is you might have seen that the lights have changed because my lamp apocalyptically blew up in my face. Oh dear. But anyway, moving on. Now, the next phase is just really putting all the wiring in. And I'm consulting my reference book and looking at this diagram, and there's wiring here that I've got to put in. Now, all this electrical wiring at the back of the cockpit, which you're probably not going to see, but hey ho, I don't care. So, again, consulting my drawing that I probably drew about 13 billion years ago, I am actually doing this part of the wiring. Now, yes, it might be, in the grand scheme of things, a good idea in my head, but I try to replicate it by putting a load of just electrical wire together and then squeezing it with some tweezers and then trying to squeeze it together with my fingers. It did work in a fashion. It wasn't perfect. It didn't look exactly like the diagram, but you'll see it on the close-up anyway. So I'm just offering it up, just seeing where I need to put the tin foil. And yes, this is tin foil that I'm gluing on. So cut it to a strip and then put some super glue on the back of it and then glue it into position. And literally, because it's tin foil gluing onto brass, it glues down very well. Okay, so with the front done, what I'm doing here is just putting some super glue on the back of the tin foil for the back of the wiring, just to keep it all together so that it doesn't all come apart. It's just simple that way. But anyway, I'm just going to leave you with this, and I will speak to you in a bit when I start doing the bending. And oh yes, I'm using some PE scissors to cut the tin foil, just so much easier. Anyway, cheerio, see you in a bit. Okay, so the bending bit. Now, this is the bit that I told you where it just did me head in for just hours. So what I need to do is bend it so that it's square and all the wires go around and they can be all next to each other. So the trick is to push that way. Okay, so it's weird, I know, but you want to hold it with that hand, like I said, and then push it the other way. So you want to bend it and push, bend it and push. And then every now and again, you want to come in with the tweezers, like so, and then squeeze. And then keep doing that until you get that shape. Simple as. Oh, it's simple, but it took me about 4 bloody hours. Anyway, so offer it up, and it should sort of look like something like that. And when it's all in, I think it looks all right. It'll pass at 40 feet. So anyway, the next phase is putting the tie down. So as you can see here, I'm just using the pencil to mark out where I'm going to put them, because obviously you wouldn't have been able to glue them on without doing that, and there it is. So it's not very hard to do that. So with that done then, I just want to show you just for a couple of seconds where we're up to right now. So as you can see, put a lot of wiring in there. Don't really need to show you that because it's just gluing wiring in. So yeah, anyway, this kit has an issue, and it's when you try and put the cockpit into the fuselage, and it's because of this bar here. Now it intersects this bottom bit here, and there's no gap for it to fit, so it's snug up against the fuselage. So best thing to do is just nip it like so. Okay, so next up, what we need to build is basically the fuel cocks and the long range oil tank transfer cocks, and all this cabling here. Just 3 wires that go from one side to the other. So I'm using 2mm rod and 1mm tube, both plastic and brass respectively. So I've drilled out the plastic rod, and now I'm going to sort of cut it out. So I want to cut it at 2mm, which I'm doing here. As you can see, I'm just using the same principle as you use cutting the rod. And then when I've cut them out, just put some glue on the back of there, and I've already punched out some plastic sheet. I think this is about 2.5mm, because obviously the rod is 2mm, and then I'm just gluing it on there just to make a bracket for these rods to go across. And then basically I make 6 of them, because obviously the 3 rods, 3 rods, 3 on each side. I had to think of that then for 2 seconds. So with these parts that we've just made, it's a case of trying and get in there and glue them in. So yeah, it was a bit of a ball ache, but I managed to get them in. The next stage is sort of measuring those that we just put in, and then transferring that measurement over to the side so we get all the bars straight, which I managed to do. Again, bit of a ball ache, but managed to do it. But the actual measurement of the bar itself was very easy to do. Is you just sort of measure the back, cut a piece of brass rod, put it on the back of the fuselage like so, and then you get a general rule of thumb of how long you need it to be. Again, not rocket science, but it took me about 20 minutes to figure out how the hell am I going to measure this. So I've got to measure down from the edge of the top of the fuselage where the canopy fits basically, and then the other way, which I'm going to do right now. And then I'm measuring that way as well, just to make sure that it's 5mm from that edge there, and then that's it. And then with them all in, and again, to be fair, it's not too much of a ball ache to try and get them in, but either way I got them in. So I'm quite impressed with the way and the fact that they've actually gone in there. So I've just got to make one more, put it in there, and be done with it. So quite happy with that. Now with that done, I'm quite happy of how it's turned out. I managed to get them square, but again, it's just a case of test fitting or measure and measure again. And I kept doing it until I got it square. This bottom one here was a bloody nightmare, an absolute nightmare. It didn't want to go in, and it was just because it was fouling with the radio equipment bracket thingy that I'd built. So I just moved it down a bit. So I'm quite happy with the way it's turned out, to be honest with you. Next thing is trying to paint in there, but I have sort of semi-painted there, so it's fine. And then basically that's what we've got there. So the next thing to do is to do the piss tank. Yay! We've got a piss tank to make. Now, again, this might not have been on every single aircraft, but I'm going to put it there, just underneath the seat where it should be. So, yeah. And this is basically what I'm going to make, again, from the book that I've got. And then that's piss tank, that's the tube, and then we've got the funnel to make on the end, which I'm quite sure what it's supposed to be, but it's a sanitary funnel and container. Ooh. So what we're going to make this out of: 2 bombs, 48th from a Tamiya P47. And if you've already guessed that, you're more of a geek than what I am. Well, yeah, all right, fair enough. Anyway, so I was going to make it out of 2, but I've decided, looking at the actual drawings and realising I'm going to make it out of 1. So in my mind's eye, what I need to do is cut one side off, leaving that hole, because it's where the actual pipe is going to come out of. And then I'm going to make a mess with this super sharp Japanese tool, which in a minute I'm going to catch my glove and cut that. I'm surprised I don't actually cut my finger, to be honest with you. But either way, so one end cut off, and now I think you've already guessed it, it's time for test fitting. So I'm just working out with a pair of pliers, or tweezers, dickhead, pliers, where I need to cut. Jesus Christ. Anyway, so that's generally where I need to cut, so somewhere about there-ish. and then I take it out and use my super Japanese ultra choppy tool to cut my glove. Yes, I do that, and oh well. But anyway, so moving on, carry on chopping through. It doesn't really need to be super square. There we go, you see, look, knob. Anyway, so carry on chopping through, and hopefully I don't chop through the actual buck, and then I end up with something looking like that. Now I've cut it short because I'm going to cap both ends with some plastic card. Something quite simple. Just cut some square plastic card, put it around it, and then shape it. So flattening the end, and I'm doing this just so that I mean, you don't really need to do this because you're going to put some plastic card on the end. So I'll actually super glue the plastic card on the end, to be honest with you, and then you profile it. So like I said, you don't really need to do it. So, boys and girls, I'm going to leave you with me fanning about for half an hour of how to make this pot. So, cheerio. Now, with that all done, we are going to go to the next phase. Now, using the same book that I have not shown you what it is, but it's Valiant Wings, cracking book. So if you go to page 172, you will find that we're going to build the intercom distribution unit switchy thing and the Morse key there. So that's what we're going to do. So if you cast your mind back, I built a box in the corner, which I'll show you how to do it. Now, to be fair, I'm going to use some resin. Now, this is a resin casting block, and I just like using this because it's just softer and more pliable to build something out of. And you've got all this stuff laying around anyway, so might as well use it. So I formed the block. I didn't want to show you me sanding it, but either way, I've basically also I've made these two round bits on the end that I'm going to drill out to put some wiring in, and they were just made with the punch and die set, and I've just drilled it out as you can see, and then I've just punched and died a load of switches and stuff on the top, or just a couple anyway, and then now I'm going to glue it onto the back. So again, rocket science it is not. It's just a case of scratching your head, looking at the part and going, do you know what, how was it made, this, that and the other, and then just putting it in. So to be fair, the location and the box itself it might not be, shall I say, 100% accurate, but do you know what, I don't care. But anyway, that is that in there. And with that done, I basically did exactly the same for the the oil transfer cock switchy thing at the back of the cockpit. So yeah, anyway, next thing is, well, this is a different kettle of fish. This is the Morse key. Now it comprises of, well, obviously you've got the bar there that runs down, and then what sits on the top is the radio part here. So obviously you've got the frame for the radio itself that it sits on, and then you've got the radio itself that's sort of, I'm going to do a, all right, 3D map of the radio, and I'm even going to write radio on here, look, because I'm stupid. But anyway, so the Morse key is going to sit off this bar off the bottom of the radio. So that's basically what I want it to look like. So the first step is to use some plastic sheet and cut these square pieces which are going to form this and that on the side that the Morse key is going to sit into the middle, and then the Morse key is going to be made out of some metal or some aluminum. And there we have it. They're the two side pieces glued on, super glued on to the rod. So the final bit before I actually do all the knobs and switches and all this, that and the other on the top, knob. But anyway, I'm using my engineer's square, my vernier calipers to square it off and measure it and all this, that and the other. Then I've got to profile it. So I get a strip off the end and then I have to cut it again and then profile around the end. So anyway, I'm going to leave you with this, and I'll see you in about a minute's time. Cheerio, see you in a bit.
Do you think I want this?
Yay! We're finally finished scratch building. Well, apart from this long range oil tank transfer cocky switchy thing. So I've got the cock switches to put on there. Cock. But anyway, so the Morse key's all done, as you can see. I had to do some punch and die stuff, and I found a round knob to go on for the actual Morse key itself. So yeah, it's quite nice, that, to be honest with you. Nice and shiny knob. You know what, when I said that I'd finished the scratch building, well, yeah, I lied. I know, I'm sorry, but to be fair, when I'd done the paintwork, I realised that the seat belts for the Navigator, the rear anchor point, I've got nowhere to put it. So there should be an armoured shield behind his head. So I decided to make that. So I'm using this protractor measuring tool just to get the right alignment for the canopy. So I'm doing that. So you lock it off. And then when you've locked it off and you've got the right angle, you can transfer it, or angle of the dangle, you can transfer it to the plastic card. And to be fair, it got a little bit out of hand. Yeah, I used all those tools, but I ended up with this. So it was just a simple case of measuring and cutting and all this, that and the other, and profiling. And then when you've finally got the right measurement and what you're happy with, just test fit like so. And only when you're happy with the profile can you move on to the next stage, which I did here. I must admit, I actually made it twice just because I weren't happy with it. But what I'm using here is an Hasegawa tri-tool, just to get the right circle, and also a drill bit, just to get my eye in of what size I need to do. And all this is just by eye, looking at drawings and pictures and going, yeah, that'll do. As I said earlier, this is just all by eye. So what I'm going to do is 0.13 and 0.5mm plastic card to make the actual round circles. So the first one I've made is 0.13, as you can see there, but the actual base of it, I forgot to mention, is 1mm thick. So transferring the tri-tool over to the plastic card. Don't forget, do it in a corner, because you don't want to be overusing too much. Yeah, simple. Anyway, then what you want to do is absolutely anchor the tri-tool down. You don't want this to move while you're cutting. Doesn't matter how much tape you use, just stick it down and just make sure that this is not going to move anywhere. The worst thing you can do is while you're cutting, the bloody thing is moving. Trust me, I have done it so many times before that I've had the actual tri-tool moving, or whatever tool I'm using as a template, and I've just totally cocked it up. But anyway. And then it's a case of cutting it out. Bit like rescribing, cut all the way around the outside of it and move the plastic sheet with you as you go along. And this is what we end up with. And to be fair, it looks a bit gnarly, doesn't it? Anyway, what we need to do is deburr it. Now I've got 180 grit here. yeah, basically what you want to do is allow the grit to do its own thing. You don't want to be pushing down. The worst thing you can do is push down and put a flat spot in there. So just keep going nice and gently, and then basically you end up with something like so. Doesn't look too bad from what I previously showed you. Seeing as that this is only 3 parts, yeah, it's just time consuming. So I first drilled a pilot hole of 1mm, and then I basically came in with 1.5, 3 increments of 0.5 to 5mm, and then just ended up with that. Anyway, so next stage is to make sure finally that everything fits. So pushing all the wiring that's going to go into the instrument panel and all the radio equipment at the back and everything. So just test fit, just make sure everything's all square and spot on. I must admit that I'm not struggling here, it's just making sure. And it's a good fit at the back, don't get me wrong, it's really good. So placing it all together and then just make sure that the front all fits in. And to be honest with you, I must admit I did it slightly off camera because I couldn't see what I was doing because the camera was in the way. Anyway, so it actually all does fit, as you can see. So I'm going to leave you with me trying to force feed everything into there so that I can show you that it actually does fit. And I will see you again in about 2 seconds, 2 minutes, minute, not quite sure. But anyway, see you in a minute. And there we have it. That is round 2 of the scratch building cockpit assembly thing. But anyway, it's all done. It's all in there. I've managed to squeeze as much as I can in, and basically this has took me about 5 weeks. Yes, you heard that correctly, 5 weeks. But anyway, I just want to say thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in part 3 for the painting of the cockpit. Anyway, cheerio, and I'll see you again next time. Bye.